Alrighty, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside Movies Galore, episode 66, where we are here to talk about Brett Leonard's 2005 movie, V. Uh, so uh, this was a choice that Celeste here has wanted to talk about for ages.
Yay.
So why don't we begin with Celeste, and why don't you describe the film as you as you believe it to be, and when was your first? Um,
When
uh,
did you see it first?
I saw it years ago. I don't know exactly when, but it was a long time ago, and I thought it was awesome.
okay,
Um,
why don't you describe what the film is in your words?
there's a lot that goes on, but basically, this sort of law enforcement person is trying to uncover internet crimes or through investigating on the internet, and he suspects that women are being killed on this website where people are putting bets on when they'll die and at what weight because they're being sort of force fed to death. And
Okay,
he investigates that.
and did you have a favorite scene that you would like to share with the group?
Oh, there are so many scenes.
Really?
I really liked the more brutal ones, like when he got hit in the face at the end. It was or stomped in the face. It was so like it made me twinge, and not much does. So I liked that part a lot.
Okay. Alrighty. Why don't we go to since this is the first time on Sam? Why don't
Yeah,
this was a new time watch for you, correct?
yeah, I've never seen the film. In fact, I watched it earlier today, and honestly, my impression of the film was uh, I was a little surprised because I didn't know anything about it before I'd seen it,
Okay.
and so I wasn't sure what to expect.
Okay.
And I think the very first time that they showed one of these oversized women, pretty naked. I was a little bit in shock. But the film itself is actually very thoughtful, even though it's kind of seems exploitive and shows a lot of things that may gross out, the audience. And I mean, hell, just seeing, an oversized person, practically bare ass naked is probably enough to make some people squirm. And yet the film is also very thoughtful. It really cares about the characters, and you really want this. What was his name? Philip. You really want him to succeed in helping these women and basically being their advocate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was on that level. The film worked. I think it was a very attractive film. I think it flowed very well. And despite the fact that I was really, I'm not going to lie. I actually, when the film started, I saw TLA had released it. They do a lot of LGBT films, and as a gay man, I thought, oh great, I'm going to see like some gay sex here, and that obviously was not the case.
Well, there was a little bit of somewhat implied early
Okay,
on.
so a little bit implied, but yeah, it definitely was not the film I was expecting, like I said. But I kind of thought of it as a cross between Seven and Untraceable. I don't know if you remember either one of those films, but Untraceable was a film where a guy was, committing crimes on the internet, and kind of counting down when someone was going to die. And then, of course, Seven was about, the seven deadly sins, and specifically gluttony. And so those are the two films that kind of came to mind. And yet the film isn't really like either one of them. It's actually in many ways, it's actually a very beautifully shot, bright film, and almost kind of has the look of a comedy in some ways, which kind of really, I just love how all these different elements came together and it kind of told a story that we kind of knew where it was going, but at the same time, it was also very original in how it put all these different elements together.
Katie, what did now this was this a first time watch for you?
This was my first time seeing the film,
Okay.
and I have to say that I thought the concept, exploring this sort of fetish of feeders and gainers and that whole thing was like an interesting angle, and I thought that it had a lot of potential to get really crazy and really demented. However, I felt like the film in itself overall was problematic in terms of just, again, representation of fat women in media.
Okay.
Like, for me, it's not the representation that I'm looking for in a horror film for fat women. So it played into a lot of those stereotypes that are harmful. As a fat acceptance advocate, I've actually taken a look at a lot of this stuff and sort of examined overall in films. If you look at where the representation is for fat women, especially fat men, it's a little bit more acceptable in the media to see that. But in terms of fat women, you don't really see fat women in strong feminine sexual roles. They're typically in a joke, or in this case, you have those negative tropes like this, very large fat woman who's pretty much helpless. She can't really move, and her sole purpose is just to eat, and in the way that it plays into the storyline, it's obviously you need that character. But it was just bothersome for me in terms of I don't see a lot of women that look like me in horror films. And while the main fat character in this movie her body doesn't necessarily look like mine, but as a fat person, if that's all we see of fat people is like this gluttonous figure, it's bad representation. So for that reason, it was really tough for me to like the movie, if that makes sense.
It wasn't funny.
I had thoughts on that because when I was watching it, I think that, people have the instant gross out reaction sometimes to the feeding scenes and stuff like that. And I think that the movie takes that and it also it shows characters who are dismissive of these women, like they're eating themselves to death anyway. Why do you care? Sort of negative terminology about them, like the other police officer was saying. And then that conflicts with this guy really seeing them as people, which I think a lot of people would dismiss that woman as a person, unfortunately. And so I liked that it contrasted that and tried to really humanize the character in a way that for a gross out movie, they sort of made it gross in the other way of I found it shocking and gross in that people were dehumanizing her and dismissing her existence, and that was what really stood out to me the most. But then I found it really shocking when he shot her at the end.
In a sense, the relationship between the aggressive feeder to the feedee,
they're called gainers.
Well,
the ones that eat,
and it's sort of a totalitarian relationship. Is he? I know a little bit about cults and the relationships between a controlled group of people, or from what I understand, a cult can be a single person. It can be between you and me. It could be between a husband and a wife. It could be between best friends. It doesn't have to be just one group. So I consider the idea that a cult-like relationship is in between these two.
well, this is also very much like a sub-dom relationship.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Because this is a sexual fetish for him.
And she put herself in the position of being the ultimate sub because she was completely helpless, which actually gave her the power in the relationship in a weird way because she couldn't do anything for herself. So he had to do everything for her.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also what I was putting myself, that was a horrible feeling for me, thinking of being completely helpless in that extent.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brandon,
as far as the concept of that, very horrific.
Brandon, was this a first time watch for you?
No, I had the first time I watched it was I can't remember when, but it's been a while back.
Okay.
And sadly I had a easier time with it the first time.
Okay.
I actually couldn't sit through it the whole way this time. And that's a rare thing for me. I thought I had developed a stronger stomach over the years, so to speak. But I just got to that point where I was just like, okay, this is painful to watch. I have to stop at this point.
Mhm.
You think that
Which does not happen. And I've seen all of the Hostel movies and been able to get through those. So
Mhm.
you think that maybe since you saw it, some life experiences that you've had might fall into why you couldn't get through it?
it could be. I know that a lot of times a certain type of it's like a certain type of gross out thing
Okay.
does still get me. It's like trauma is on the edge of that, which is why I always have to pick and choose what I watch from trauma, because sometimes I have to just gut myself through some of those scenes because of that, which you wouldn't think so, because a lot of those scenes are not realistic gore. But it's just certain types of things that trigger my like gag reflex and so on, and that just a little bit difficult for me.
Okay.
But I remember a strong vibe to me about Seven, because I remember watching Seven after that film a while back and thinking, this reminds me of the other film I watched a while back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Anything
but
else? Did you?
that's about
What was a what was a scene that you would say that you had to turn away from the most?
any of the any of the force feeding type things that
Okay.
were
Okay.
there. It was, I guess that's just to me. It's just that's just a level of discomfort.
Okay.
Of course, I've had to personally watch somebody's stomach rupture from overeating,
Okay.
which
Oh,
is
geez.
not a yeah, which that's a personal thing. I doubt most people see that on a daily basis.
Not
Understandable. Dustin, was this a first time watch for you?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to say. So we've done what, 60 or so of these together, and this is the first time I strongly considered just turning it off and saying I'm not being on tonight. Like, this movie was fucking awful.
Do you hate me?
This is the worst movie I've seen, like, in living memory.
All right. Try to
Like, it was purely like just disgusting imagery for its own sake. It's like, look at this, it's gross, brah. It's like everybody's talking about, art and cleverness, and I'm like, where was this projection? Like, all the little speeches he did, like, were the fucking worst. It's like, oh well, the things that eat the best are at the top of the food chain, and it's like, well, yeah, if you've never read a textbook and had high school philosophy, that sounds amazing, but when you think about it for a minute, it's just fucking stupid. Like, the entire thing, like, the first half of the movie did not seem to fit together. It was like, okay, we have a bunch of gross images. Let's just use whatever clips we can find and like string them together that way. It did become coherent in like the last 30 or so minutes. I will give it that. Like, and the ending, it was all right. It had cool music. But for the most part, it's like, why did I subject myself to this? God damn it. Whew. Wow, we all got that out in one breath. Holy shit.
The way
I could,
put yourself through the worst of it to stomach the rest of it.
I was doing my taxes the whole time. It was just like, oh, is something supposed to be happening?
I could answer your question though. Like, why would you subject yourself to something like this? And honestly, it's because Philip is such a likable character. Honestly, that I actually felt that focusing on his character and his motivation and his passion to solve this crime is the one reason why I didn't turn it off. because I actually really wanted him to succeed, and I really felt for the guy. I really did. I wanted to see him, follow this through.
To be honest,
I really felt like he was a total pig, and like he was only doing this so he could, make himself feel better about what a pig he was. Like, well, maybe if I, and then in the end he ends up killing her anyways, and hooking up with the fat sister. Like,
Yeah.
what was that about? Like, to me, I was like, I wasn't loving him throughout this film anyways, and the ending was like, yep, I still don't love you. He was, to me, he did not win me over.
No, well, and at the end, I kind of thought, okay, this guy messed up really bad, and what he did, especially killing her, I didn't condone that whatsoever.
Well, didn't she almost die during that scene a few times anyway?
Well, sure, but like in terms of him being like this whole thing redeeming him, like him being a character that like you want to succeed, like never at any point was I like, yeah, I don't want this guy to die. I was just waiting for it to happen, and he ended up not, which was fine. Whatever, the way it ended was, I thought it worked for the film. But yeah, no time was I ever championing for him, or the other guy, really.
Yeah. And I don't think I was necessarily saying I was maybe championing for him, but at least I kind of, I don't know. For some reason, I felt like there was more to him than what we were seeing on screen. I don't know.
I thought so too.
I thought so too. And me, myself, this was a first time watch for me as well. I actually picked it up specifically to talk about it several months back. We chose a different film, which, we've been having fun anyways on the show, haven't we? So,
Yeah.
I have fun because I'm talking to you guys sometimes. We'll put it that way.
well, in any case, we suffered together through these. So,
I like you guys more than I hate this movie, which is substantial.
Even me.
Oh no, you're fine. Like,
Maybe if we'd all had a few drinks before watching this, we'd all be better off.
But that's what makes cinema such a great thing, is that it's so many things to so many different people. Whereas I might find this film revolting to watch from personal experience, or difficult to watch, it can at the same time truly hit home or find a great appeal to somebody else and be a favorite film. And to me, that's what makes any cinema great, is that it can strike that chord, all those different emotions from one side to the other. I mean, that to me, that's what makes this a great medium.
And the thing that I noticed is, have you guys ever watched the new version of Hawaii Five-0?
No.
What the fuck's that?
Well,
No.
the guy who plays Lieutenant Commander Garrett in the current reboot of Hawaii Five-0 is actually the bad guy in here. That would be Alex O'Loughlin, and he was the guy who was force feeding the fat chick.
Well, the actor was good. The character was fucking stupid. Like, what's going on with his like Norman Bates thing?
But
Like,
The mommy thing was grossing me out. I can't handle like
like
I thought that was a really fun dynamic, like really creepy, like how your childhood traumas shape your present day fetishes, and like taking that to the max. Like, I really enjoyed that aspect of this movie, how they took like a really interesting concept and kink or fetish and kind of really exploited it really big. This would definitely be an exploitation.
Exploited is certainly the proper term. I'll give you.
And the thing
Yes,
is,
I enjoyed that about it.
This man was supposedly very good at blocking cyber attacks from finding out what he was doing. It's like it was the cat and mouse.
They didn't even really talk a lot about that. There was no like IT portion of how he was able to do any of this stuff. and I
No.
enjoyed not having to sit through that. Actually,
Well, I think that was
some
you know,
movies like explain it more.
well, that was the
Well-
time period, too. Nowadays, we're all so tech savvy that I think any of us could have figured it out a lot quicker.
I don't know. To me, it. How do I put this politely? I had the impression that there was not a writer until there was about 20 minutes left in the movie. It's like it felt like they just shot what they wanted to, without any
You weren't
cohesion.
paying attention enough, Dustin. If you
I
weren't doing
agree.
your taxes, you were actually watching the movie, you would know the storyline was following a path. It was making sense.
The
And I
storyline
just think
made
you
sense
were
later on. It's
distracted.
just early in the
No,
beginning.
it made sense the whole time.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those weird like Tarantino movies that jumps all over the place. It was
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
It reminded me
Yeah.
a lot of. It reminded me a lot of murder set pieces on how I couldn't figure out what the hell was supposed to be going on until like late in the film.
Yeah, I think you were doing your taxes too much.
Mhm.
It wasn't that complicated.
There's one scene where Michael and Philip are sitting there talking about women, and one of them was like, "Oh yeah, well, women. I love a woman that has a lot of meat on the bone," and then it was like, "Oh well, a skinny woman is virtually like a boy." I mean, they had some good dialogue that really established, what these guys were thinking and what their views were on, how they should view women and attraction, and that really helped you get into the character's head quite a bit.
You also have to
That
look
came
at
off severely warped to me. Like that. That
So
was.
it was work, but at least I understood where they were coming from. I mean, it's a great psychological study from that standpoint.
and
Well, it was taking a concept and really, again, exploiting this idea of like a lot of what was said in that dialogue did make a lot of sense. We are force fed a certain body type as being whatever standard, conventionally attractive, or whatever. And I like that they sort of push that boundary but again, way over into
people do
extremism to a point where it's like embellishing on that extreme fetish angle of it, which as an activist, I'm just like, no, it's not the representation that fat women need. But like,
Well, and
again, I get its purpose for the film.
the filmmakers would have really done themselves a great service by introducing a larger woman as maybe part of the police force or someone that they consulted. A very positive character to kind of contrast this vision.
And I would add to that, the character of Deidre was played by a woman wearing a fat suit. Like they didn't even get a woman of size to play that character, which is a huge issue, like a completely different conversation about fat representation in the media. But again, it's like put somebody in a fat suit instead of actually hiring a real actual fat woman to
It's
play
kind
that
of
part.
productive for sure, yeah.
I don't think they had any good intentions whatsoever. I think that's what people are failing to. I think they were trying to make fun of these people, like at best.
Well, that's why I said there was problematic imagery and representation for the film. Like I'm trying to like not hate it just based on that, because if I hated horror films based on their misrepresentation or lack of representation of people that I can relate to, like there wouldn't be that many horror films that I would watch, So aside from that aspect, like looking at what they did with the story and stuff, yes, but there is that component for me where it's totally problematic, and for that reason I can't say like I loved the movie, because that piece just didn't work for me.
I didn't love the movie, but I also didn't hate it. When I recognized who the main bad guy was, and then I was like, "Oh, him!" I mean, he doesn't look like, except he doesn't look like him because he's got bleached blonde hair and all that jazz. So to me, it was almost an entirely different role because normally he plays a straight-edged character. And I also remember watching him in a series called Moonlight or Moonlighting.
Yeah,
or
Moonlight came in 2008.
Moonlight.
Yeah.
He played the lead vampire, and his hair was longer, and he was relatively decently straight-edged in there too. So seeing him as a psychotic type of character where he's got a specific.
With a really bad hairdo, by the way, it was awful. Yeah.
What, you think you're gonna make me have a psychotic episode in the middle of an obvious psychotic episode? That gave me a good laugh.
Well, do you think the film was meant to be taken that seriously? I mean, do you think that maybe it was supposed to be kind of funny and we just didn't get the joke? I mean, it's just I couldn't get the tone.
It had a very bizarre mixed tone. Like that's why I made the comment about how it felt somewhat cobbled together, because some scenes had like a really serious dark tone, and then some scenes were just like you could have had like Benny Hill music almost.
You could have had a laugh track. And it would have made it better.
Well, the beginning scene when you see the hamburgers come in on a plate towards the obviously obese a woman laying on the bed, which she's pretty much half naked by that time. And all of a sudden she says, "Feed me," and it kind of reminded me of the Audrey 2 plant, from
Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors for just a moment. So, and then of course they had some old time music playing. And so, in a sense, it was kind of a comical scene to me, and it didn't gross me out then. And so, I guess I would say that it had an interesting soundtrack.
The soundtrack was cool.
Yeah,
I was
the
down with
soundtrack
the
was good.
soundtrack.
Yeah, it was a good soundtrack.
Like,
Well,
I gave it a star just off the soundtrack.
Okay.
what did you think of the music that was played behind it, Katie?
It was okay. I didn't love it, but I thought it worked well with the movie. That one song over and over was kind of annoying, but other than that, like it worked.
What did anyone think of the girlfriend of the detective?
She was a weird
I think
character.
she served a purpose. She served a purpose of like juxtaposition of like this is the attractive, conventionally attractive, like female that you should be like. They needed some of that to balance out.
Yeah, she
the
was
giant fat.
she was so thin. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like this is what sex looks like. This is how attractive female sex is supposed to look like. Just so you don't forget after you've watched this, and again, a trope that I can't get on board with that.
I felt like she was there, like, I mean, she was obviously jealous of his work and upset that he was sort of into it. And she was sort of showing how, I think she was partly there to show how obsessed he was with it, because it showed him neglecting other things in his life for this case and how he got sucked into it, which should have just been a job, ended up being, something he really had care and concern for.
Was their relationship kind of an open one, do you think?
That was certainly what they, where they were going with that when it, where she talks about she had sex with those other people while he was gone for 4 months. And yeah, so I think they sort of did have like an open thing going on.
Okay. That's what I was trying to establish.
Was he with two different girls, like in those beginning scenes?
I don't think so.
Because, like, to me, they looked like so archetypal. I couldn't tell if they were two different people, or if they were generic on purpose.
It's possible that there might have been a body stand-in. You never know. While the filming was going on, so it all depends. So, again, we have several people who disliked the film and several people who enjoyed it for what it was. So,
yeah, mine's a mixed review for sure.
Did anyone else have anything else to add?
I feel like there was something. Oh shit! What was it?
I wanted to say that I really love psychology. It's like a really interesting study to me. So anytime something makes me uncomfortable or like visceral reaction to it, I like to try to figure out why and what about it makes me so uncomfortable. So I think this movie is one of those things that really helps you examine that. And that's one of the reasons I like it so much. what is so uncomfortable, what is gross about this movie, and it wasn't what I expected it to be.
Well, and I think on that point, I kept asking myself, you know what, if the women were shown like clothed or, weren't shown in such a state of disarray, would it have been different? The fact that they showed the women naked and they showed these compromising positions, I think that played a big part into why I was kind of like shocked by the film.
Well, I think that's an interesting point because that was the least shocking part about the whole film to me. But I
Yeah.
think because for me, I mean, I look at a fat body naked in the mirror every day. Not, of course, the same as what we saw in the movie. Again, that's an extreme
Well, it's not that they're
case.
naked, it's just that they're in a compromising position.
Well, and let's be honest, like you're not used to seeing bodies that large naked. So, I mean, we call it like it is. That's the
Yeah.
truth because that representation is not there. And a woman of that size, again, it's not something that's even considered really acceptable. I mean, this is a horror movie. You have to put that stuff in horror movies. Like you're not going to see a person of that size playing a different role even in that body, unless it's to basically focus on the fact that they are that fat, which was exactly the point of this role. Like that, we're really exploiting this whole picture that you're seeing of this fetish and this practice and this helpless fat person, and it creates that trope that without that extreme looking person, you just don't have that because it is that shock value. You don't see it, and when you do see it, you see it like this, which makes it demonizes it. So the next time you see a person of that size, even out and about or whatever, you're going to think of this demonized idea that you saw in this movie, and that's why it's problematic. But like I said, I can really see the psychology of that and why it was probably a really fun thing to exploit.
She seemed like to me, she seemed like the ultimate victim because she was completely helpless. Like if you had like someone who was paraplegic, I think it creates another level.
It wasn't just that she was completely helpless. She was also completely brainwashed into loving this man. Or
She might not even have been brainwashed. She genuinely might have enjoyed this. This might have been what she actually wanted. And I think that's one of the things that when she's killed, you have to confront that she did not want to be saved.
well, and some
It was unwelcome. She was enjoying this life. She was making a choice as an adult
part
person.
of this
She
fetish.
wanted to die.
I think so. Part of it, I think that was what she was into and what she wanted to do. And part of it was saying, we don't believe that anyone in that condition can make that choice for themselves because we don't understand it. She was basically saying, hey, what are you doing? This is my choice. This is my life. How dare you interfere with that? And it makes you take a step back and say, hey, are we always trying to rescue people that don't want to be saved?
Well,
Then why did she get upset when he tried to smother her? Like, why didn't she wasn't she just like,
Because she didn't sign up to die, Dustin. She signed up to gain and to be fed.
Right.
I mean, you don't sign up and say, I'm doing this because really I just want to die. If you just want to die, you die. That's part of the act of the fetish. She's getting something out of it. No matter if you can understand what that might be or not. She's getting something out of it. The feeder's getting something out of it. It's a dynamic. It's a relationship. It's a sexual thing.
Death isn't the end goal.
Between food and
somebody brought up the point that like it was her choice.
Okay, what's your favorite food?
I'm not actually sure.
If you had to choose a favorite food that you would eat all day if you really wanted to, what would it be?
I should know this. What's happening?
See, to me, I would be able to eat pizza.
Probably.
I would be able to eat pizza. Or I could eat a cheeseburger all day. I could I could eat that all day myself. And certain foods, don't get me wrong, are enjoyable to eat. They taste good as they go down, and in the sense, sometimes people get a sense of euphoria that is almost like an orgasm.
Well, and this isn't about addiction. I mean, just like a smoker or someone who likes to drink a lot, but at the same time, it's like if we do it to ourselves, it's one thing, but it's when someone else is doing it to us. Like, let's say that somebody was smoking us to death, or they were, making us drink ourselves to death. We would blame that other person, even though this might be something we would choose to do on our own anyway.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a pretty good point.
from a psychological study, it's actually a very fascinating film. In fact, I'd like to, as a filmmaker, I kind of look at this and say, you know what, if I was to make a film on this exact same subject, what kind of take would I have on this material? And I think for me, I would do definitely a more psychological evaluation on these characters and really try to get into their heads, not just make like a crime drama about trying to save someone who, like you said, probably doesn't want to be saved or doesn't care if they're saved or not.
Very true.
They did have an earlier moment with the thing about consent, like, I want to be eaten. That scene early in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
And that was to help you understand the viewpoint of, like, that's even though it looks really fucked up, like, this person, like, that was the whole point they were talking about. Like, can a person decide that for themselves? Like, that was the like make you think piece.
Well, and the film actually starts with a little disclaimer about, oh yeah, these are real sex practices, and it made it sound like people really didn't have, that they didn't have much of a choice in terms of what they did sexually, if it was considered unnatural or deviant in a way. And I was kind of a little bit thrown off by that, disclaimer at the beginning. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it kind of made it sound like unless you're having normal sex, then there's something wrong with you.
Like, it seemed to me, the feeling I got from that disclaimer was kind of like, look at this, it's happening in your backyard. Like, it did not set a sympathetic tone. It was like, oh,
And the thing that I got is that the detective was actually on a case at one point in time that had to deal with a similar scenario, which is why I saw the two guys in the bathroom, and the one guy had just eaten his penis or something like that.
It looked like the cut of his thigh.
Like he was like, "No, you don't understand. I want to be eaten."
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because it made the point that someone was trying to make about the end of the film, but it was much more clear.
So, in any case, did any of you ladies have anything else to add, or we wrapped this up here? I think we've had a fairly interesting discussion here.
Yeah, I would say I could go on and talk about, plus size representation, but that's kind of off topic. I have a lot to say on that, but I think overall, yeah, I didn't like that part of it, but the movie itself was interesting. Like, I would love to see more films that kind of take this type of a concept, like sexual fetishes, and sort of look at the psychology behind that and sort of exploit them and make them kind of big. But I realized that too, in addition to this being like problematic for me in the sense of fat representation, I can imagine that the people with fetishes probably would see this as being problematic as well if they're part of this fetish. Like, I would like to believe that there's nobody really out there trying to feed people to death and like gamble on when they're gonna die. But I have to imagine, like, the fetish community who's like doing things like this responsibly, like, this could probably be a pretty problematic film for that community as well. I don't know anyone in that community, but it's like Celeste mentioned, it makes you think about the psychology behind this. And I try to be really open-minded in terms of different fetishes and different kinks, because I think part of me is really intrigued by why people do what they do and what they do, and why I do what I do, and the fetishes that I have. and sort of examining that, and I try to like be respectful of what other people might be into, even if it's not something that I'm into, as long as nobody's getting hurt by it. So this is one of those things that sort of borderline, it borders on that because there is some concern to health and things, because of how dangerous some of that stuff is. But yeah, I find it a very interesting topic, and I'd be interested in other movies that are similar, because I think anything that where you can take something psychological and really make it creepy and scary, those are neat, make you think type movies.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did
I would-
go ahead?
I would say that in terms of psychological concepts and exploring different kinds of well, let's just say case studies. Like, I think you could have probably have done better, because a lot of it came off to me as, I mean, yes, it was an interesting concept, but a lot of it came off to me as ham-fisted and just kind of slapped together. Like, they didn't put as much thought into it as you'd expect, and it felt like it was just all done for the purposes of exploitation and attempting to shock the audience. So I don't think it had all these high-minded motives behind it that everyone else is able to see.
I think that it did. Myself, and you're more than welcome to your opinion, just like everyone else here. And I believe that it was intended to shock at least a bit of people, to an extent that there might be this type of crime out there, and what do you do to prevent this kind of this kind of thing from happening? You can't in most cases, because when someone has an addiction, it's kind of hard to stop them from doing what they do, unless you have one of those case scenarios where you have someone or that they know, or something, have them look in the mirror and have like some kind of a you know uh, uh, scare, if you will, into reality of exactly what they're doing to themselves. Oh, but once again, this was a psychological film, I believe, and thank you for bringing this film to our attention, Celeste.
No problem.
We got some pretty spirited debate off it, Like,
Well, hey,
I enjoyed that part.
Yeah. And all I know is that someone spent several months of their lives making this film, and I respect the effort. And
Okay.
that
Well,
says a lot.
in any case, at the end here, Sam, normally we go through where we tell who we are and what we do. So I'm going to start with you, and why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've done, and what we can look forward to in your
Okay. Well, great. Well, and I'll keep it brief. So basically, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. Back in 2008, I kind of made my first film called Disembodied, and the follow-up sequel called Disembodied 2, and sold them on Amazon. And then, realized that I probably should get some education. Went back to school, got a degree in film and media arts, and think that education is really important if you want to be an effective filmmaker in terms of from a technical aspect. And so my recent film that I just released back in September on Amazon was called Chameleon Shadow. And it's a kind of a psychological horror thriller about a young photographer who sees shadow people, and he has recurring nightmares, and gets referred to a specialist known as the Chameleon, who basically cures his affliction for having nightmares, but then everything he dreams about, it comes to life in the real world. And so and that's kind of stories I want to tell. I like to focus on psychology and kind of, like I said, the human element, but also kind of have a little bit of fun with it. And it's not really a hardcore horror film. because I think I'm too compassionate at this point with my characters. I don't want to hurt them too bad. But in the future, I do kind of want to, maybe stretch out, do some more horror, and eventually, maybe do some other genres too, like comedies and stuff. But right now, I want to present films that have a point, but at the same time, also helping people to identify their demons and face them head on.
See, now that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
You have any other films in the works right now, or
Well, I am working on a sequel to Chameleon Shadow.
Okay.
Basically, the first one was about a guy who, kind of faces his inner demons, and then I want to do a sequel about now that he has the confidence. Every time I've gained confidence, there's always that one person that has to try and tear me down, and that's kind of what the sequel is going to be about. It's going to be about the demons that we see in other people. So that's kind of one idea, but I also, as a gay man, I have been urged to branch out and maybe do some LGBT themed films, and so I have a couple of other ideas I have in mind as well. So I don't want to be a one-trick pony, so I'm definitely going to try some other things.
Okay.
But that's kind of my immediate focus is getting that follow-up film done, just because I think that the story is so important, and I don't feel it was completed with one film. I think that there's still more to tell there.
Okay. And do you have a production name that you go under, or?
Right now, it's under Kelly Mills Production,
Okay.
which is basically my husband's last name and my name combined. So,
Okay.
in fact, you can find me on Facebook under Sam Kelly Mills, but that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Cool. So that is Sam Mills, everyone. So those who are listening out there, definitely check out his film or films. Some of them are on YouTube, and some of them are. One of them is at least on Amazon. So definitely check his work out and look out for what he has in store for us. Miss Celeste, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
Hello, I'm Celeste. I am a co-host on the Horror Host TV show Deadger's Dark Coffin Classics. If you'd like to see our shows online and you are not in the Kenosha, Milwaukee, or Racine area or Madison, check us out on vimeo.com/ddcc.
Okay. Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where?
Sure. I'm Katie Cadaver, and I'm from right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I am a body positive horror artist and alternative model. And you can find my pictures on Instagram at Third Eye Open. That's 3RDEYE0PEN. I've also got some stuff going on patreon.com/Katie Cadaver. You can check me out there. I'm also the makeup artist for horror punk band Ratbat Spider. You can listen to them at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. And I am also a dead girl for Deadger's Dark Coffin Classics, which Celeste mentioned already, vimeo.com/ddcc. And I am a performer and producer for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque Productions. You can find us at facebook.com/Grindhouse Tees. And also next Saturday, April 28th, we'll be at Frank's Power Plant for Dead on the Dance Floor with Beaker, Size 5s, and Slaughter Party. They're releasing their latest CD in the Milwaukee area, and that's Psychos in Love, which will be available at the show. So come out and support us on April 28th in Milwaukee at Frank's Power Plant.
Cool.
Yeah. I saw her show on Friday the 13th Fest on Friday, and that was one hell of a cool Chainsaw Massacre themed thing. Like
Thank you very much.
I couldn't see a lot of it because apparently everyone is like a foot taller than me everywhere I go.
I'm not.
But right, there is you.
Brandon,
Pretty
why
sweet,
don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
Well, my name is Brandon. I run a YouTube channel called Septum Sen versus the World. Me and my co-host Kotobuki Jake, we are all about the physical media and preserving, I guess, film in that format. And we do pick up videos, release videos, and occasional vlogs. That we are kind of in an evolving state on the vlogs, but with those and the movie reviews, we're continuing to update, and I'm hoping to get some stuff. I'm matter of fact hoping to see some stuff from my co-host in the near future. I just have to edit it.
Cool. Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I go to UW Milwaukee. I'm studying remote sensing right now. I'm supposed to be an editor for the Movies Galore blog, and I want to have some reviews put out, but my classes are abnormally hard this semester, so that's been slowing it down, but they are coming, people. I'm a horror collector from Milwaukee. I have an Instagram, DHR Hunter, all one word, where I just show off all my stuff. And that's more or less it, I think. Normally, I don't dislike movies this much, so don't be too shocked and think I'm a jerk. I mean, I am kind of a jerk, but not that much consistently.
And my name is David Strege. I run Movies Galore Milwaukee as well as Inside Movies Galore. I have been your host for this evening and present and past and future. And I'm also a small-time producer, so I have some projects that I have in the wings that have yet to come out, and one of them is Wrestle Massacre, which is coming later this year sometime. I'm not sure of the date just as of yet, but it is still filming and it is still for go. So also a short film from Hungary, which is called Vaults, which it just recently got a soundtrack main title to it. So there are definitely some things going on there, and I'm also working with some projects with Dane, which was he's normally here, but he could not be. But in any case, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great discussion here with the Inside Movies Galore crew. Thank you once again to you fine deviants and horror that are here. And hopefully stay tuned next week for another yeah, well, whether we decide whether it's a horror film, a science fiction film, we will let you know, folks. So stay tuned. This has been Inside Movie Galore signing off. Ladies and gentlemen,
Like, share, and subscribe. Do it. We need to
Sure.
remember to say it.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye bye, guys.